Sorry, sweetheart, this table's for family only. That was the moment the laughter died in my throat. My mother's voice, syrupy sweet, deliberately loud, rang out across the restaurant's polished floor like a bell of dismissal. She gestured behind her, and I followed the arc of her manicured hand to a metal fold-out chair tucked beside the swinging kitchen doors, and a trash bin. Everyone laughed. And I stood there, heels pinching, gift bag still in hand, face burning, hoping it was a joke. It wasn't. Not one of them made room. Not my father, who didn't even look up. Not my brother Nathan, the golden boy with his arm draped over his wife's chair. Not Ivy, my younger sister, who glanced at me with mild amusement before turning back to her wine. I sat where they told me. Folded into the corner like an afterthought. I ordered sparkling water I couldn't afford and stared at the bleach-stained floor while they toasted my mother's birthday at a candlelit table that cost more than my monthly rent. That chair? It wasn't just metal and plastic. It was every ignored phone call, every forgotten birthday, every time they made me feel like a placeholder in my own family. That night didn't break me, it woke me. Because when the bill came, a monstrous $4,600, and the waiter looked at me expectantly, I smiled. That's not my table, I said. And that was the moment everything changed. Growing up, I thought if I was useful enough, quiet enough, good enough, they'd see me. Really see me. I was the middle child. The invisible space between Nathan's shining ambition and Ivy's glittering charm. While they collected trophies and compliments, I collected errands. Be useful, Ria, my mother would say. You don't have much else going for you, do you? When Ivy got a bad grade, she got a tutor. When I aced my finals, I got silence. At 7, I spent hours crafting a handmade birthday card for my mom, colored hearts, a poem in crooked handwriting. She opened it, blinked, and set it aside like a grocery receipt. That same night, Ivy gave her a cheap bracelet Dad bought, and she cried like it was a diamond. Still, I kept trying. I got a job at 16. Bought my own clothes. Paid my way through community college. Sent birthday cards. Called on holidays. Left voicemails no one returned. I clapped when they celebrated each other. I clapped when I had no reason to. And for a long time, I thought that was love. But that night, watching them toast, laugh, and order bottle after bottle of wine while I sat by the trash, I realized something. I was never part of the table. They just needed someone to clean up after it. The waiter handed the bill to me like it made sense. Like of course I, folded into the shadows of their golden glow, should cover their decadence. My mother didn't even blink. Didn't you say you're doing well now, Ria, she said with a faint softness. Real estate and all. You've got it covered. I had, in fact, just launched a small property firm. Scraped together from years of exhaustion and skipped meals and too many quiet nights with nothing but fear and spreadsheets. I was doing well. But not $4,600 on people who mock me well. I looked around the table. My father avoided my eyes. Nathan smirked. Ivy was too busy texting to pretend to care. I should have cried. I should have tried to explain. I should have begged for understanding. Instead, I smiled. I'm not with them, I said, voice steady. That's not my table. And I stood up. The silence that followed was a new kind of music. Sharp. Clean. Free. I walked away, heels clicking on marble, heart racing not with shame, but with clarity. Because revenge doesn't always come with fire. Sometimes it comes in silence. And silence? That night, silence set me free. I didn't cry when I left the restaurant. I didn't scream, or throw my napkin, or say the dozen cutting things that burned behind my teeth. I just walked. I remember the way the streetlights shimmered on the wet pavement, how the air smelled faintly of rain and exhaust. Every step felt like shedding skin, old versions of me peeling away with each click of my heels. By the time I reached the corner, I wasn't the girl by the trash can anymore. I was the woman they had failed to recognize. I took the long way home. Past the buildings I'd helped lease. Past the little bookstore that had once let me post business flyers in the window because they liked the way I spoke. Past the dark office space with my firm's name still taped inside the glass because we hadn't afforded signage yet, but we would. I'd built something. From scraps. From nothing. And they never noticed. They never asked how I was managing contracts alone, or how I juggled inspections, closings, and staging without a team. They never saw the all-nighters, the migraines, the panic attacks behind the steering wheel. The ramen dinners eaten next to blueprints. The celebratory dance I did in my socks when I closed my first deal. No one clapped. But I did. Alone, yes, but fiercely. That night, I got home and peeled off my shoes like armor. My feet ached, but my chest felt light for the first time in years. I poured myself a glass of water, sat on the floor in my modest apartment, and stared at the ceiling. The silence was still there. But it no longer hurt. It comforted me. I reached for my phone. 43 unread messages. Half of them from a group chat I'd muted months ago. The rest were from my aunt, my cousin, my mother, each ping time-stamped somewhere between the main course and dessert. I didn't open them. Instead, I opened a new folder on my laptop. The table that broke me. I started typing. Not an email. Not a revenge letter. Just a truth. A memory of all the times I'd made room for them. Given without thanks. Showed up without being asked. I wrote about the prom dress I hemmed for Ivy when she cried about the boutique shop being closed. About the night Nathan called me at 2 a.m. after crashing his car, and I picked him up without a word. About the time I offered to cover part of their vacation when Dad's bonus didn't come through. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to be seen. I read those words back, and for the first time, I didn't feel weak. I felt honest. I felt brave. I saved the file. Not for them, but for me. As proof that I had always been more than they chose to see. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. My body was tired, but my mind was sharp. I had a property showing at 10, a back-to-back with a new investor at noon, and a zoning meeting that evening. I brushed my hair, put on my best blazer, and stood in front of the mirror. You belong, I whispered to my reflection. You always did. And somewhere deep inside, I believed it. The day moved fast. The investor signed. The zoning board approved the modification. And I went home with a small smile on my face. That night, my phone rang. It was Ivy. I stared at the screen as it buzzed. The girl I used to be would have picked up. Would have apologized for making things awkward. Would have tried, once again, to fold herself into a shape they found easier to love. But I let it ring. She didn't leave a voicemail. The next day, a card arrived in the mail. No envelope. Just a glittery front that said, "You looked really nice at dinner, sorry things got weird." Inside, my mother's handwriting scrawled, "We were just joking. Don't be so sensitive. Family teases. Come to brunch Sunday, we'll try again." There it was. The reset button they always reached for. No apology. No ownership. Just the illusion of normalcy. A chance to pull me back in. I stared at the card for a long time before setting it down beside a candle and striking a match. The flame licked the edges slowly. No drama. No anger. Just peace. They wanted me back, not because they missed me, but because they missed the convenience of me. The giver. The doormat. The scapegoat. But that woman didn't exist anymore. I watched the last corner of the card curl into ash, then I opened my laptop again. This time, I started drafting a letter. Not to them. To myself. The letter began like this. Dear Ria. They didn't see you. But you were there. I didn't know where it was going when I started writing. I just knew I had to say it. To finally speak the words no one ever bothered to ask me for. I wrote about the nights I came home from back-to-back jobs and studied until sunrise just to pass exams no one celebrated. I wrote about how I'd iron my blouse behind a closed bedroom door while Ivy rehearsed TikToks and Nathan got ready for another party. How I'd wash the dishes while they laughed in the living room and Mom said, "You're good at cleaning, Ria, don't ever lose that." They never carried the weight of being invisible. Of being useful but never loved. Responsible but never respected. I paused, fingers trembling above the keys. I didn't want revenge. I wanted release. Because here's the thing, when they said you're too sensitive, what they meant was you noticed. When they said get over it, what they meant was forget the part where we made you feel small. But I couldn't forget. Not the time I won a regional essay contest and no one came to the award ceremony. Not the time I missed Ivy's baby shower to close on a property and she called me selfish, said, "It's not like your work is real anyway." Not the holidays I spent trying to be cheerful while they exchanged inside jokes like I wasn't even in the room. And definitely not the night they handed me the check for $4,600 and expected me to smile while I paid it. No, I didn't forget. But I was done carrying it. You do not owe them softness just because they're family. You do not need to explain to people who refuse to understand. I hit save and closed the document. Not because it was finished, but because I was. That weekend, I received a text from my father. "You embarrassed your mother." That restaurant thing? Completely unnecessary. Unnecessary. Like me. I stared at the message for a full minute, then calmly deleted it. No reply. No reaction. Not anymore. Instead, I opened a new spreadsheet, projected growth estimates for my firm's third quarter. We were close to breaking even, and if things kept going the way they were, I could afford to hire a full-time assistant by fall. It was quiet progress. Not viral. Not glamorous. But it was mine. Monday came with rain. Thick clouds and heavy wind. The kind of day most people cancel meetings and curl back into bed. But I showed up. Hair tied, umbrella snapping in the wind, portfolio under my arm. I had a showing in a neighborhood I could never afford growing up. And now? I was pitching a multi-unit property to a retired couple looking to invest in rental income for their grandchildren. They asked smart questions. Took their time. And halfway through, the wife looked at me and said, "You're sharp. You remind me of myself when I started in insurance. No fluff, just facts." I like that. I smiled, real, quiet, proud. They signed the papers by 3 p.m. And I walked out with soaked shoes and a signed offer in my bag. On my way back, I passed a flower shop. A modest little place tucked between a dry cleaner and a bakery. I don't know why I stopped, but I did. I picked out a single sunflower. Bright, bold, unapologetic. I brought it home, placed it in a glass jar by the window, and sat beside it with a cup of tea. It felt symbolic somehow. Like I'd just given something to the version of me that once asked, "Why don't they love me the way they love them?" And the answer was finally clear: I was never broken. I was just never what they expected. Or wanted. But that didn't make me less worthy. Later that evening, I got an email from Ivy. Subject line, about the dinner. I hovered over it, heart oddly still. I clicked. Look, I know things got weird. Mom's dramatic, and Nathan, well, he's always been entitled. You know how they are. We were hoping to see you at brunch this Sunday. Let's just move on. Move on. The phrase hit like a stone tossed across glass. Not "I'm sorry." Not "you deserved better." Just, move on. I closed the tab. And then I opened another one, my firm's contact form. I rewrote the bio section. Before, it had been humble, safe. Now, it read. Founded by Ria C., a resilient entrepreneur who built her business from the ground up with no handouts, no shortcuts, and no safety nets. We don't just close deals. We build futures. I hit save. Because sometimes moving on doesn't mean returning. It means rebuilding forward. Without them. A week later, I got a call from my brother, Nathan. Hey, sis, he said, his voice light, forced. Mom said you're doing pretty well these days. Thought maybe you could help me out, got a property I'm eyeing, but my credit's complicated. I blinked. The audacity. Nathan, I said, coolly. Do you remember where I sat at Mom's birthday dinner? A pause. Look, that was Mom's call. You laughed. Silence. I continued, the bank might approve you. But they'll need a cosigner. Try asking someone who saved you a seat. Then I hung up. He didn't call back. 3 months passed. My firm hired 2 assistants. We secured a commercial contract. I leased a small office space, nothing flashy, but warm, wood floors, sunlight pouring in, a big round table at the center. Clients sat there, team meetings happened there. And sometimes, when the office was quiet, I sat there with a notebook and tea and just breathed. One day, I placed a small plaque in the center of that table. It read, "Everyone has a seat here, if they earned it." That table didn't just hold paperwork. It held boundaries. And healing. In December, an ivory envelope arrived in the mail. Handwritten. Ria, come home for Christmas. We want to start over. Bring that sunflower smile with you. Love, Mom. I stared at it for a long time. Then I went to my bookshelf, pulled out my letter to myself, and read it aloud. You do not need to explain to people who refuse to understand. That night, I wrote my own card. Just 3 words. I already did. I sealed it, no return address. Because healing isn't about getting invited back. It's about no longer needing to walk through that door. The new year brought a citywide feature, women who built from scratch. My face. My firm. My story. On page 2. People started reaching out. Investors. Clients. Even distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years. And then. Ivy. Her message came through Instagram. I saw the article. I get it now. You really did it. I'm sorry we didn't see you. I read it twice. And I replied. Thank you. But this was never about you seeing me. It was about me seeing myself. She didn't respond. And that was okay. One spring afternoon, I hosted a small dinner at the office. 10 chairs. A mismatched tablecloth. Paper plates and good wine. My team laughed. My mentor gave a toast. We passed bread, shared stories, clinked glasses. At one point, I looked around. No tension. No silence sharp enough to draw blood. No proving myself. Just presence. I stood, raised my glass, and said, here's to the tables we build ourselves, when the old ones push us out. And for the first time in my life, I felt it. Not just accepted. But chosen. By me.